Yo, what is good, my people? It's your man, Drew Dapps, coming at you with my first ever tutorial track breakdown, FL Studio walkthrough type of thing. Shouts out to StoryTime Music for having me on to do my thing and show you guys how I make tracks. So, yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so what's the most important element of house is definitely the kick drum. So I'll show you what we got going on here. Yeah, so just a fat 909 style kick. One tip I like to use as far as kicks is that I put a little bit of sausage fattener on there, fatten it up a little bit, as well as a smack attack. It's a plugin from Waves. It just increases the transient, it makes it smack, literally. Just go a little bit harder. And then as you can see as well, I have a EQ automation throughout the track. So what this is doing is just cutting some low end, creating a high pass filter, like in the intro, breaks, and throughout the track. And that just kind of helps with the energy throughout the tune. And when the kick is high pass, the bass is going to be high pass as well. So it's just helping out the arrangement. Like as you can hear, the bass is also being cut out. So you're just getting those high end frequencies. But yeah, I think what's also an important part of the foundation of your house track is the bass. You want to get the low end right before anything. So we'll just take a listen. I'll show you guys what we've done here. So when I make my bass lines, I like to have a combination of a synth patch as well as samples. Just kind of adds some extra texture to it, and it creates variation as far as like a call and response. So we have the pattern that I made here in Serum. When you're making these bass lines, considering 16th notes is very important. You just want to do 3-4 notes max. Honestly, the short bass lines be hitting, but when you combine it with like a sample like this, it's got that kind of glide to it, so it works with the other bass that I've used, which is like a preset in Serum. And what you can see is that I process them with R bass, which is a plugin by Waves. It just makes your bass more harmonically rich, more smacking, more hitting. And you can see what I've done with the bass. I have it going through a reverb only in some parts, like when the kick is high passed. I've also made a separate pattern in which the bass is one whole octave up. So that's just the main pattern, but one octave up, high pass with reverb, and that just adds some variation to the bass line, and gets the listener yearning to get back to the deep boomy part. Yeah, so when you get the kick and the bass down, I think what's the next step in your tune is to get the percussion groove down. So we'll just slap it a little bit right here. Okay. So as you can hear, there's a lot going on, and there kind of needs to be a lot going on in this style of track because you don't really have any melodics going. There's no like synth lines or not too much of that. So your percussion needs to be doing that kind of work. Your percussion's got to be like making the hook of the track, if you will. So how we achieve that is I've taken a bunch of loops and cut out the parts that I like and combined them with other samples, like some syncopation. And then I've made my own kind of groove bus, as I call it, where we got a bunch of percussions going and they work well with these other drum samples that I've selected and chopped from the loops. So you want your sounds to be able to like work with one another and just kind of like sound like they're all one cohesive thing. And with each group of your drums, I feel like there can be like a groove within the group. So like with the hi-hats, I'll show you what I've done. I've layered a closed hat and two different open hats. And I've also have this EQ, which is like cutting out the high end at the end of each 4-bar phrase. So it's kind of making like a pattern within the hi-hats itself. And we've done something similar with the clap. We just have a fat tech house kind of clap going for the main part of the clap, but we also have like an additional extra clap, which is just kind of there for texture. And what I've done, what I generally like to do with this extra texture clap is do some variation with the velocity. So the second one is hitting harder than the first one. And additionally, I have an automation clip going with the hats that's automating the reverb. So as you can see, and you can hear if you're paying attention to it, but when you're just listening to the track, you're not really going to be able to tell. But the reverb amount is higher. It's more wet on the second clap. So what this does, I find, is it kind of adds like a little groove within just the claps themselves. Of course, we got the extra clap. It's just like a clap fill with some delay and reverb. And speaking of fills, that's definitely important for like a high quality professional sounding tech house track. You want to have those throughout. I like to have a few different ones. And so you'll hear that fill throughout, the clap fill as well. Just helps to bring in the next part of the track. You know, and you can chop up fills and combine them to make them your own. But yeah, those like vintage kind of sounding drum fills, those be hitting in your tracks for sure. And then yeah, I just made like this simple little clav one. Hear that in the context of the track. Yeah, so the fills just definitely help carry the track along, make it more interesting for the listener. And speaking of like interesting for the listener, another thing you want to make sure of when you're making this type of music is you want to have a lot of effects going, except you don't want too much effects because that can take away from the groove, and the groove is definitely the most important part because, you know, that's what gets people dancing, that's what gets people vibing on the dance floor. So place an emphasis on the groove for sure, but the effects help add ear candy elements and keep your listener interested in the track. So yeah, you can hear something like that. I have a lot of sounds from Omnisphere for my effects. Just Omnisphere has like a fat bank for samples. So I'll go in here and I'll find some weird trippy sounds and then just kind of spread that throughout the track. I've used that one a number of times throughout. And then I also have a whole bunch more effects down here. Try to stay organized as much as I can. But Don't be afraid to pull from sample packs. You don't always have to use a synth for effects because the sample packs be having like the slapping effects as well. Like, yeah, this one here is like a phone sound. Anything that you can find that adds like a unique character to your track that fits, it's definitely worth putting in there. So yeah, effects also work for transition elements. Speaking of which, we'll just skip to the drop so I can show you guys how it builds up with the effects and how it releases that tension that's created from the effects and the automation. Let's just have a listen. Got one mode and it's dope. It's dope. It's dope. Got one mode and it's dope. It's dope. It's dope. Got one mode and it's dope. It's dope. It's dope. Got one mode. Back it up a moment. It's dope. So as you can hear, it's kind of like a wall of sound that's building up. You're teased with the bass line here. You can hear it a little bit. It's coming in more, but it's still high pass. In the break, you want to take out the low end so it's big smacking when it comes in on the drop. But you also want to take out a bit of the high end as well. You kind of just want to make it sound like all of the drums are far away. So that's what we're doing here with the clap. You see this EQ automation is taking out the high end. So it kind of sounds like it's disappearing in a way. And we're doing the same thing with the hats as well as just the drums. Put them through a Love filter, which is a filter plugin in FL Studio. And it just makes it sound like it's kind of getting farther away. It takes out the high end and the low end and makes it more mono. And when things are mono, it sounds like it's further away because it's like hitting both your ears at the same time. You feel me? So that's what we're doing. We're making it sound like the groove is getting further away, but at the same time, we're building with the snare roll as well as the white noise buildup. And this here is just reverb taken from the whole track in reverse. And another good pointer I can push you guys onto is this plugin here. It's called Endless Smile. So put it on the master channel and you can see what it's doing. Excuse the lag. Project going a little crazy, but yeah, so we have this automation going on the intensity knob. You do that by playing with it. Tools, last tweaked, create automation clip. And that's going to affect the intensity, as you can see here. And on every build part, we're doing a little automation clip. What that's doing is it's adding like a reverb washout effect. It's adding some reverb, it's adding some delay, and it's taking out the high end as well. So it's just helping to make it sound like it's further away. So it makes that drop impact a lot stronger. And yeah, one thing you want to make sure is that you have a lot of texture, especially in your breaks, but through the whole track as well. So as you can see, we've got like a jungle sample. Turn it up so you can hear it. So yeah, just like a field recording type vibe. And we also have this sort of grainy texture going as well. Kind of sounds like a record or something. And that just works with the white noise and this sine uplifter to just create a sort of wall of sound before the payoff vocal. And speaking of that vocal, I can show you a little tip on that as well. So let's take a listen. Got one mode and it's dope. It's dope. It's dope. Got one mode and it's dope. It's dope. It's dope. Got one mode. So with this vocal, made it different just to add a sort of like surprise element. Got one mode and it's slowed down, but it's not slowed down in the sense where it's gonna sound like it's slowed down, like got one more. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a slow-mo effect. And you do that by changing the elastique, I think it's pronounced, but change it to speech E2 here. It preserves like the tonal quality of the vocal. And another thing that I did to make it more interesting is I ran it through this plugin called Rhythmizer. Did a little automation on that, so it just triggers at the end, but you can hear what it's doing. It kind of chops it up here at the end. And then here, there's just a whole bar of empty space pretty much, except for the payoff vocal.
Back it up a moment. Here's the go.
And then that double crash. Love me that double crash.
Here's the go.
Just be smacking. Another thing I like to do with my drops is with the white noise downlifter. I was always intrigued hearing this in house music when like I first got into it, and I was wondering how the producers achieve this, but it's actually quite simple. We just got a standard downlifter. Well, this is actually an uplifter reverse, but you know what it is. It's white noise. And then we just did a little bit of choppity choppy right here. So it creates that interesting rhythm. And then the parts where it is present, we layered with another white noise, so it's more intense, as well as did some panning automation, so it's bouncing from left and right. And what you can do to intensify the white noise is add like a crowd sound. So those are both being routed to the kick, doing the kickstart. But the crowd just kind of adds to the body of it. And, you know, if you slap it in the club and the audience isn't really feeling it, at least you can pretend, you feel me? Nah, I'm just playing. But yeah, anyways. One important part to keep in mind when you're making house music is just like the texture. You want there to be some background elements that's like helping out with the percussion and adding to fill up the frequencies. Although it might not really be noticeable when you're listening, it just makes a big difference in the quality of the track. It's not going to sound so dry. So check it out what we got going here. This is like a Vox that's playing throughout the entire track. Well, let's turn it up so you can hear it.
I was playing last night and I started singing it. I was playing last night and I started singing it. I was playing last night and I started singing it.
So that's going on behind the drums throughout the whole track pretty much. But it was like, I was playing last night and then I started singing. But it just kind of helps out with the groove. It fits in between the drums and it just adds some more texture to it, you know. It's subtle, but it makes a difference. And then this here is the same kind of thing. Just kind of like an ambience going throughout. Helps fill up the frequency though, and it makes the track sound better in my opinion. But yeah, another thing to keep in mind when you're making house tracks is to use a reference. So as you can see in my template, I leave a spot for a reference track. So what you can do is find a track that you like, something that you want to make something similar to. And that's how I adopted the arrangement here. And what I did is I studied the track and I noted when the breaks happen, when the drops happen, when the intro and outro happens, and you can base your track off that. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it just kind of gives you an idea. And to keep track of the timing, just add a marker and say when stuff happens, like add open hat or whatever it be. And that will just help you with your arrangement overall. But yeah, that's pretty much it. With this kind of music, it's all about the small details. You want to have stuff like fills and effects that make it interesting. Like one example I can show you is like we have these kind of small micro breaks, as I like to call it. So what we did here is we high passed the kick and the bass. That's just gonna take away some energy. But what I've also done is I've taken like a whole drum loop and I've ran it through some filtering, some kind of coloring. I'll let you listen to it. It's just like a top loop basically, but it's different from the rest of the track. It's got its own groove going on, but in a way, this groove replaces the main groove just for a little bit. You're just barely hearing it, but it just makes for a nice variation when the rest of the drums are ran through that love filter again, and the low end is being high pass. So you're kind of introduced to like a new sort of groove.
Okay.
And with this clap reverb thing, it introduces it and also exits out of it smoothly. Those transition effects are everything. You definitely want to take advantage of those. But yeah, you just want to pay attention to the small details, add lots of little ear candy stuff that you find from sample packs or your stints like Omnisphere. Just find some cool sounding stuff after you get a solid groove, which you got a bunch of motifs talking with one another. Make it for very danceable, interesting sound. And once you got that, you're good to go, baby.
Yeah, whoa.
That's pretty much
Back it
it.
up a moment. Here's the go. Okay.
Yeah. But do pay attention to your drum selection as well. You want to get samples that are, relevant to the genre that you're going for. They gotta be like the right vibe, or else you're not gonna be able to achieve the sound you want. Make sure that your drums are on point. Same with the vocals. Just dive deep on Splice or wherever you get your samples from, and make sure it fits the vibe, and you'll be good to go. Yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you were able to learn something. Once again, my name is Drew Dapps. Big appreciate you tapping in, and big ups to StoryTime. Appreciate you rocking with us, and hope you're able to learn something dope that you apply to your own tracks. Take it easy, all right? Appreciate you. Stay up. Late.